Do you see more bucks specifically using some of the more low ground areas, maybe like on the edge of the floodplain or down where it floods at? Or do you see them using a slightly higher elevation? It might be 2 or 3 feet of elevation change, but do you see a difference there in kind of where they're moving more of the time?
It really, man, it all boils down to hunting pressure, depending on that. Sometimes they use, if there's more pressure there, if I'm dealing with a little bit of pressure in that area, but it's on one end, and I'm kind of away from it on another end, the deer kind of still tends to do what he'd do, as if he knew he was being hunted, which he does, at that point, usually if there's two or three guys in an area. Um, but then they'll definitely use that water more, I guess, say or less to because I mean they think like everything else, they go by what they see. And they're not gonna see a whole lot of humans, swimming in the water. They're not gonna see a whole lot of coyotes swimming in the water. And that's just if they see somebody two, three times in a spot, they'll avoid at least the more mature deer and the 2.5, 3.5 year old deer I'm starting to see now, are picking on up on this stuff a little better, and I actually kind of like that. Maybe they'll maybe they'll live a little bit longer, more often anyway.
So we're clarifying, with areas with more
And
pressure.
I'll tell you one thing they like to do, and some people disagree with it. You can disagree with it, if you're somebody that disagrees with it, that's fine. This is my opinion from what I've seen. And I've seen comments on other pages discussing how they don't believe in it at all. But down here, you better believe, unless it's Deadgum Rut, a buck, he's walking with his nose in the wind from the time he gets up out of his bed to the time he gets to wherever the first spot he's eating at. And there's certain little junction points that you can get creative on, and you can find a way to get in there and get set up in between there and where he's headed. But you just got to do your homework and you got to figure it out. And he's not going to be there every time. You're throwing a chip in the pot. When you go in there, and there's a chance. Just like we say all the time, it's hunting. You're not going to kill him every time, but that's a big. I've just seen too many pictures that on the cams I have that show that theory to be 1,000% true. And it's just I believe in it 1,000%. So that's kind of where I'll start. When I'm trying to figure out what a deer's doing once I'll find that I guess relaxed zone.
And we're gonna get to the relaxed zone here in a second as well. But one thing you just mentioned, and I want to clarify, you're talking about in the more high pressure situations, those deer are closer to the water or in the water, traveling with water, correct?
Right.
So
Yeah.
we had a guy, one of our buddies, Shane Parker. He's got a friend that hunts some river bottom in a completely different area, and he said the same thing. He's like, he's been hunting that stuff for 25 years, like in this one area. And he's like, if you find big
Yeah.
buck tracks or big buck sign more than 50 yards off the water, it's a pretty high pressure. Like that piece of pup gets a lot of pressure.
That's
If you find tracks and sign more than 50 yards off the water, it was not made during daylight hours. He's like, they are on the water edge. So it's interesting
right.
you saying that too. In a high pressure situation, they're on the water, bedding close to the water. They're traveling along the water in that thicker cover on the
Usually
edge.
they're crossing it. Usually they're crossing it, and they're using places where they cross it continuously. Where they're crossing it from one island to the next little island to the next little island to the next little island. And that's what they like to do, because that way, your average Joe can't just go down through there, and they'll cross it in different places. I've seen them, do that a whole lot. They just don't do the whole lot of the same thing twice. But they will do things similar, and you just have to find, like I said, everywhere there's a junction point. There's a spot he's messing up, and he's letting his guard down, and you just got to get there in that spot. Because I've seen him, walk 400 yards, and probably if you'd have been walking the trail he walked, you'd maybe seen 5 tracks. So
Interesting. Also, Austin, one thing I want to get into as we're kind of working through the early season, and I know I've been taking up a lot of Andrew's time. He hasn't been able to talk in a minute now, but walk us through the situation. And not every piece of public is going to set up like this, but if a guy's setting up and he's hunting some river bottom, like stuff we've hunted at Arkansas, where you're hunting river bottoms next to a lot of ag for early season, what is your strategy there where the property line's not on the ag, might be 50 yards to the woods, or it might be around the edge of the field? What is your strategy there when it comes to like feed trees and like your thought process of morning or evening hunting those kind of areas?
yeah, once I locate, that feed tree that I, see that, go in there, see that has acorns, I'll make a game plan up, like you said, before the season. And it starts out with access. A lot of times we don't have water that time of year because it's so dry. It's early in the year. We just got out of summer. So I'll use those dried up slough beds a lot of times. And they won't be 10-foot wide. It'll almost be like little creek beds. And I'll use those as my access because I'm literally, I don't think a deer could see me if he was standing 75, 100 yards up there anyway. They're deep cut. And I use those going in. And, once I've sat that area a few times, a lot of times I'll figure out a better idea. But most of the time starting out, I'll set up off the tree. I don't set the first time I found the tree, it has acorns. The first time I set it, especially if it's close, within 200 yards of the field, I'm going to find the best trails leaving that tree. And that's where I'm going to sit at. I'm going to sit where, I think those bucks are going after they leave that tree. Because I just feel like mornings are the best. You're not running any deer out going out. You're not running any deer out if you're going in early enough. Your thermals are usually rising if you got somewhat of a cool day. So I try to stick, just to mornings that time of year, and that's pretty much it, man. I'll stay off of it and try not to run deer out of there, going in or coming out. Sometimes you got deer still feeding, under the trees at 10, 11 o'clock, and that time of year, I'm definitely not sitting all day. I'm sitting, till 11, 10 or 11 when it starts warming up, and then I'm getting down and I'm leaving.
All right. I got a lot that I want to go over here, but I got to kick it back real quick to the bucks using the water that you just mentioned. And you're talking about how these deer will almost island hop, or you said something, you used some interesting wording there where you said something like, they'll go where they can stay in the water the most, or something along those lines. Can you go a little bit deeper on that? So what is it? So you're saying that the bucks are actively trying to stay in the water as long as possible. They're just walking through like knee deep water or something.
These spot areas I'm speaking of, like there's plenty of high ground. They're on that particular little island where they're, the flood zone sloughs surround it. And there's little sloughs and little just creek channels cut everywhere that run into bigger little lakes and sloughs. But they what they do is you think about it, if a coyote or if a human being, or even somebody turning loose dogs, is going to hunt somewhere, if they go in there and they go, well, and the first time they go in there, say they don't go in there preseason when it's all dried up. The first time they go in there, they have no clue. And every 100 yards they walk, they either have to, pull out a set of waders, and then take them off and then put them back on, and don't know how they're, supposed to get, navigate it all. They're not going to go there very much. And the deer, there's plenty of high ground in there to hunt. I think guys just get too hung up on, if I can't walk a long ways in there, I'm not going to hunt it. And, they go in there at a time of year where, it's all flooded and they can't walk very far. Which that gets, goes back to, guys are doing too much scouting during deer season, rather than doing all the scouting they need to do during February, during turkey season, before deer season comes in. And I'll do it. The last time I walk into the woods is when I'm going in September to check those acorns, and I'm not going into the woods again until, opening day. I'm staying out of there.